And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house with Evan Brand. Today, we're going to be talking about nutrient deficiencies, some of the more common ones we see, and how they connect to fatigue, mood, and cognitive issues. We're going to dial in. We'll give you a root cause perspective. We'll talk about lab testing. We'll talk about what some of the data says and what you can do about it. Evan, my man, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I got my
Great.
morning beach walk in, so I'm feeling good. I got plenty of
Ooh, nice.
sunshine, plenty of steps in, so I'm feeling good.
Are you missing
And
Kentucky yet?
no, definitely not.
No?
No,
Hmm.
no, I'm enjoying the sun, enjoying the weather. And what's interesting though is like you can't really farm much in the South because of the soil. Like if you go a little further north, you can, but it's amazing the soil here. Just me trying to grow stuff on the topic of nutrient deficiencies, it's
Yeah.
been really tough. Now, like my rosemary's done really good, the blueberries have done okay, the citrus has done okay, but some things are definitely stunted. So it's interesting to adapt to the different soil. But what people don't realize is that in the last 100 years, we've lost 80% of the magnesium in the soil. If you just look up magnesium deficiency USA map, you can look at this map and it's pretty incredible how much of the nutrients that used to be in the soil are completely gone. And this is just over farming practices. This is not regenerative agriculture practices. Even the iron in the meat has declined. So I know you and I are big fans of getting people on like more of an animal based diet, getting good animal protein sources. However, even the iron in the meat has decreased significantly because of the soil. And if you look at papers that I believe it was the USDA put out a study on oranges, apples, broccoli, peas, carrots. There was a handful of different vegetables and fruits, and everything has declined significantly, such in a way that to get the equivalent nutrient density of a 1920s orange, it would take like 20 oranges on average to equal
Wow.
one orange of the past. And so when someone says they're eating organic, that's just really the first step. But organic doesn't guarantee nutrient density. And in fact, I've had some organic strawberries yesterday. I ate one and I was like, this tastes so bland compared to like my homegrown or farmer's market strawberries. And so organic just means it's not sprayed with pesticides, meaning you're not damaging your mitochondria, you're not damaging your gut, but it doesn't say anything about how dense the nutrient quality is in that food. And so I encourage people, obviously, get as close to 100% organic as you can. But this is really why when that I know it's like a bumper sticker, right? It says like to help, I forget how they worded it, but to help the world, you have to think local. What's that saying? Like
Yep.
think globally, shop locally, something like
Yep.
that. And
Correct.
really, you'll typically see it on the back like a Volkswagen Beetle from the 70s. But
Yep.
this idea is true, which is that when you're getting food from your local farmers in general, it's going to be from a less depleted source. These are not these mega farms that are not rotating. These are not these mega farms that have. I've seen Driscoll, Driscoll, the big fruit producer. I've seen pictures of their farms, and it's just a bunch of pots. It's not even in the soil. It's these little pot operations where they have like a strawberry vine almost, and they're just plucking it from there. And as you know, they pluck it while they're white. They're not even ripe before they get to the grocery. You'll cut open a strawberry and you'll see that it's white inside. It hasn't even fully ripened and gotten its full nutrients in it. And so this is a big problem. And this is why when we do organic acids testing, so many people are showing up with deficiencies across the board. And then if we were to look at blood, we're going to see the same thing.
And let's go over a couple of things too. There's a Senate document 264. It came out in the 1930s, and they were talking about this stuff in the 1930s, which is just absolutely nutty, right? That this was a problem even back then. I'll go over, what that document looks like. Here's essentially a copy of it that's made in more modern day form, so you can see it here. But if you look at the introduction, right? And it's kind of funny some of the language they were using. This quite unballyhooed pioneer and genius in the field of nutrition demonstrates that countless human ills stem from the fact that impoverished soil of America is no longer provide plant foods with the mineral and elements essential to human nourishment and to health. And to overcome this alarming condition, he doctors sick soils and by seeming miracle raises truly health giving fruits and vegetables. So this was part of this bill. They talked about U.S. farming practices. Leading authorities of the day have been sounding the alarm that depleted soils were causing significant decline in the nation's health. Again, remember, this was before high fructose corn syrup. This is before all the major factory farming. This is like over almost 90 years ago, right? 1936. 89 years ago. This is crazy. This was a problem back then. Imagine where we're at now. And if you look at it and you go through that document, it's going to be a 10 pager or so. If you go through it, I'll give you the chat GPT summary. But essentially, what was highlighted was soil depletion and nutrient loss. The document highlighted modern practices have stripped essential minerals. It talked about the impact on human health. So essentially, depleted soils meant that fruits, vegetables, and grains contained fewer minerals. It also talked, this is in the 1930s, there is a need for supplementation now. It's just the diet alone cannot provide adequate nutrition, emphasizing the importance of supplementation. And it also was very concerned about agricultural practices. The report warns that chemical fertilizers focus on crop yield and not replenishing the full spectrum of the essential minerals in the soil. And also, they saw the connection to chronic disease. The document argues that nutrient deficiency contribute to various health issues, including fatigue, weakened immunity, and degenerative condition. And so, kind of talks today about needing organic food, regenerative agriculture, and targeted supplementation. This is 1936.
My
Right?
gosh,
This is
man,
crazy, right?
that's wild, man. It's like a time machine. And to think about the issues they're referencing there in terms of illness, chronic illness was a fraction compared to current day. I mean, it must have been 80, 90% less chronic disease. I mean, there were not huge numbers of obesity back then. If you look at the obesity rate back in the 30s, it was nothing compared to now. You look at depression, anxiety rates. I mean, everything skyrocketed in the last really 10 years. We've seen that big hockey
Yeah.
stick. That's nuts.
Exactly. I'm putting the key points of Senate document 264, but you can see it in here. And then if you want to go, there's a bunch of web pages that will have the entire thing. This has the whole document here. Talks about calcium and phosphorus um, appears to be depleted. Talks
Yeah.
about iron to being essential. Talks about iodine is not present in our foods, which is
Yeah, they're
important
not
for
that's
thyroid
the
gland.
thing. Like when you go and talk to your conventional farmer, I mean, when I lived in Kentucky and you're talking with these typical farmers, they're going to be doing like an NPK solution. You're going to get nitrogen, you're going to get phosphorus. You're not going to be getting iodine. You're not getting trace minerals. You're not getting magnesium. You're not getting selenium, chromium. Like you're not getting trace minerals added. It's just enough to get the corn to grow, and that's it. Nothing more.
Yeah, and then there's studies looking at, like, for instance, when you have manganese deficient soil, the amount of vitamin C in certain crops, vegetables, fruit, is going to be 50% less or more. And so the minerals, the plants don't eat minerals, but those minerals are really important for the soil, and that soil then helps the plant or that crop have a full spectrum of nutrients. And so Joel Salatin, I had on my podcast a few years ago during COVID, and he talked about doing his own studies where he'd have his pasture fed chickens and they'd eat bugs and go around and eat all of his grass and such. And he would test the nutrients in his eggs compared to the conventional eggs at the store. And so he tested the nutrient folate, and he found that his eggs had 20 times more folate than the conventional eggs.
My
And so
gosh.
it just shows you when animals are force fed, and then that's not even the fact, okay, now we're going to feed animals, let's say, grains and corn and soy, so biologically inappropriate foods. And now those foods are loaded with different toxins and pesticides. Not to mention, I did a study yesterday or a video yesterday on kids with mold issues, talking about mold symptoms. And there was one article talking about congenital issues and brain issues and mood and neurological issues. And it talked about mold in the food being a big deal. And the big sources of it were like your beans, your grains, and meat that was fed on those type of moldy grains. And so it's really important that you want to be more grass fed, and you want to avoid the big foods that are going to behind those potential molds, especially the grains and the corn. And again, those same foods also, they're very high in carbohydrate. They're going to break down the carbs and stuff, and that's going to impact your microbiome and then also feed a lot of these dysbiotic bacteria or the colonized mold and candida in your gut too, that will also create more brain issues too.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, the mycotoxins are heat stable, so I'm not aware that cooking is going to really help you. So that's why you want to make sure the quality of stuff going in is going to be the best. And we can pull this stuff out. So we can pull out toxins, we can replenish nutrients, but you just have to be aware. We're just trying to paint the picture for you to understand where we've come in just the last 100 years. And as you alluded to here, 90 years ago, the alarm bell was already sounding, but I'm not seeing any articles in mainstream news about nutrient deficiencies. But yet, when you look around, I don't know if you ever saw this. This went viral maybe 6 months ago. It was a video of someone at Disney World, and they're filming all these people with cast on, and it's like some funky like clown music, and
Mhm.
it shows this guy with a knee brace and this lady with an ankle brace and this guy with an arm brace. Like basically everyone is just falling apart. Now we know some of that modern day is tied into Ozempic, because we know that Ozempic is reducing bone density. Just Google osteoporosis or bone density
Right.
Ozempic. We know that these GLP-1 drugs, the semaglutide and all that, is terrible for your bone health. We know that. But I also suspect, in addition to that, you have these people that are overweight as well, and they have pre-existing nutrient deficiencies. So it's a combination of these drugs, it's the nutrient deficiencies they're coming into this thing with, and all of a sudden everybody's a cripple. So that was an interesting video, and nobody was talking root cause in the comment. I mean, this video had millions of views, and nobody's talking about. They're just making jokes. They're not saying why. But when I saw that, when I look at content that goes viral, I'm like, that's interesting. I want to expand upon that. What the heck is going on?
100%. And the problem with Ozempic is not fixing the underlying issue. People still need to eat more protein. There's all kinds of studies out linking, like you mentioned, your bones are half protein. So if we are osteopenic, or sarcopenic, where we're getting low and weaker muscle, well, that also impacts our bones. And there's also data on that impacting our hearts, because our hearts are a big muscle that does not stop working, right? It's always beating to move blood and oxygen. And so we're going to have weaker hearts, we're going to have weaker bones. And there's even studies now showing blindness, right? Showing blindness. And we really have no long term data on what these drugs do over decades and how much will symptoms come back. And also, people aren't really learning the reasons why that they're insulin resistant and why their blood sugar is so high. They're not fixing the underlying issue. Where Ozempic may make sense is someone's morbidly obese and has absolutely no willpower, right? And can't stop, and that may make sense just to kind of curb the cravings and knock down some of that cravings. But we still need behavioral changes. In the end, this is a behavioral change issue that has to be linked in there.
Yeah. Now back to the eggs. I saw another video of a farmer recently who raises chickens, and he was saying that if he gets his feed from Tractor Supply, his chickens, on average, whatever the size of his flock, it was a relatively small flock, but that his flock would only lay 3 eggs per day. So he'd get 3 eggs out of this flock
Mhm.
per day on the Tractor Supply feed. But when he used a different supplier, a non mainstream feed supplier, his he went 5x. He was up to 15 plus eggs per day. And so he was like questioning Tractor Supply, and all these people in the comments were saying, "Hey, I've noticed the same thing after switching to Tractor Supply." So I don't know if there's some issue there where there's just nutrient deficient feed, or like what the mechanism is there. Like if that is contaminated, I don't know. Is there mycotoxins affecting the egg production? I don't know the mechanism, but I do find it interesting that many people are reporting the same thing in the homesteader community. And really, that's my point here today. Obviously, we'll chat about functional medicine labs and solutions, but my best advice is try to get closer to your food source. So if you can look up Eat Wild or Local Harvest, you find a
Yep.
local farmer near you. Try to get more pasture raised animals, not the mainstream pasture raised if you can help it. And then I love growing stuff. So I mean, I've got
I didn't know this
tangerine.
about you. So
Yeah,
you have
man.
all these stuff. Do you have raised beds? How do you keep the animals away?
I don't have raised beds. Luckily, it hasn't been an issue. I haven't seen any real issue. The birds do get the blueberries, so we will put a little net on them when they're ready. But yeah, I mean, I've had a green thumb for many years in Kentucky. We had a
Really?
huge raised bed with like these fences around it because the deer were so bad. But I grew motherwort, I grew passion flower, I grew ashwagandha, rhodiola.
See, I think
So
it'd almost be worth getting like a greenhouse, because that
yeah,
way you totally can keep all the animals and stuff out, and then it also gets a little bit more moist under there, right? Doesn't
yeah,
get overly dry.
yeah. I should have some room for a greenhouse, so that might
Yeah,
be
you could
worth
you
it.
could do a greenhouse. That'd be totally worth it.
Yeah,
I've seen
so
a
I've
couple
got
on Amazon
tangerine
or eBay.
and I've got a kumquat tree, which, oh my God, I don't know what's in it compared to regular citrus, but man, my lips tingle like crazy. You talk about like a
Really?
histamine. Yeah, that kumquat is tart, man. So
Wow.
those are almost ready. Tangerine, orange, and I've compared like your typical organic orange from Whole Foods compared to my backyard oranges. It is not even comparable. The flavor, the juiciness level, just the overall mouthfeel of a homegrown orange. It's incredible. And I do mushroom
Yeah.
compost on the soil maybe once a year. It's incredible. And you feel I mean, this sounds silly to some people, but you almost feel euphoric from a homegrown orange. Part of it's the fun. You've watched it grow for months and
Yeah,
months before you're ready, right? Some of it's the
yeah,
anticipation of
that's
it, but
cool.
I truly think, like you're saying with Joe Salatin,
Yeah.
the nutrient level has to be way, way, way higher in a homegrown operation.
100%, man. That's good. I think that's great. It's easier to get some of these foods. You have a lot more of the bigger grocery stores now carrying some of these local suppliers, which is great. So the access to it, people have voted with their dollars over years and demanded more of that. But if we can definitely support the local farmers markets, that's going to be even better. So when we talk about nutrients, nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. We see them all the time. It plays a big role with our brain, our metabolic systems. When you look at our bodies, people are so focused on calories. They're like, oh, your body needs energy. And let's look at calories. The problem is today's day and age, we can have a lot of calories and not a lot of nutrients. And so my way of looking at it is big food, big agra has gotten people to focus on calories because junk food can have a lot of calories and not a lot of nutrients. And then also, oh, you just got to watch your calories. So it makes you, if you can't stop eating that food that's bad for you, it's just like, oh, you don't have the willpower, you don't have the strength. It's all about making you a bad person and a weak person versus like, hey, maybe your body just needs nutrients. Maybe we should be eating foods that are nutrient dense because your body in the end doesn't necessarily want the calories, it wants the nutrition. And everywhere we've evolved as a species, nutrient meant calories. But in the last 100 years, you can get a bunch of calories without nutrients. That's a big change. That's a big, big shift right there.
That's a great point. And think about the bodybuilding community, right? There's so much focus on macros and
Macros,
calories
yeah.
in versus calories out. And you're seeing some of these bodybuilders drop dead. Now, some of that is obviously steroids and other compounds they're messing with to try and change their physique.
Arimidex, estrogen blockers are the big one with cardiovascular problems.
Is that what
And
it
if you go
is?
to, yeah, usually the estrogen blockers, estrogen is very cardiovascular protective. And when you just nuke it down super low, because you want to go really high on your T and you don't want it to aromatize, they take estrogen blockers, very bad on the cardiovascular. Plus, if you're doing a lot of T very high, it can increase platelets and make your blood sticky. That's why they got to be on top of giving blood. My recommendation is if you give it, just keep it in that top third of the reference range. Don't overdo it. So you need estrogen blockers.
Yeah. So look at these
Yeah.
guys though in the bodybuilding community, or you sign up for this chick who's got her butt out and her tight little yoga pants, and she's selling you on her fitness and nutrition program, and it's all about macros and calories. But yet you can be tracking calories and macros to the T and still have exhaustion, anxiety, depression. So let's talk about some of the symptoms. Hair loss is a big one.
And
Hair thinning.
macros make sense when you know the foods you're eating are nutrient dense. If I'm eating grass fed ribeye and good quality um, eggs and organic veggies and good fats and cooking with good oils, and let's say now you're trying to kind of get your macros dialed in because you're trying to improve your body comp, that's a different story. Because you already have the foundational nutrients there. Now you're trying to get specific, but usually it's the other way around. It's okay, we're going to get the macros dialed in, but all these foods are kind of poor quality.
I've seen some generic bodybuilding videos online where guys are like, "Yeah, I need to carb up." They're literally eating honey buns as like their pre-workout carb.
Oh, it's
It's like
terrible.
he's like, "Yeah, this is
Yeah.
46 grams of carbs." I'm like, "Dude, what?"
At least keep it to a clean starch, whether it's white potato or even a good clean organic white rice or even some sweet potato that's going to have more potassium, right? At least sweet potato and white potatoes and have potassium and some magnesium in there.
Yeah, so let's hit
So
symptoms.
better.
So
Yeah.
hair, energy, mood, libido, fertility. I would even argue heart palpitations in regards to magnesium. I know a lot of people that have AFib or atrial flutter, any kind of cardio symptoms, that's been improved by extra supplemental magnesium. So I mean, that's been talked about for, I've been beating the drum on that for a decade. What else symptom wise would you say? Like irritability, insomnia?
Yeah. So let's go over this. I made a chart here. Let's pull it up here. So here's some of the key nutrients we want to talk about. Let's bring it up. So big one is going to be iron. So I have kind of like a DRI range, which is daily recommended intake. This is more of like what a functional medicine person would make sure we're at. And RDA is kind of like more what a conventional medical doctor would look at. Like, hey, this is enough to starve off disease. This is more for optimal health. So we want to look at both. So of course, we look at iron, low iron, we're going to see fatigue. We're going to see pale skin. We're going to see dizziness. B12, we're going to see brain fog, weakness, numbness, neurological issues. Again, magnesium, Evan's talking about magnesium, muscle cramps, anxiety, poor sleep. And again, we want at least 300 to 400 milligrams, maybe just supplemental a day. A good magnesium malate, a good glycinate can be great. If we have a lot of brain inflammation, we may add in a threonate that crosses the blood-brain barrier. With the iron, we're going to be using an iron bisglycinate or a succinate, like we're going to be using a better chelated magnesium or better chelated iron, because a lot of the ferrous sulfate you get from your conventional MD just causes dark stools. Or we may use even like a grass-fed liver glandular that's going to be really high in heme-based iron, as well as a iron bisglycinate as well. And then just to kind of tag team on the magnesium here, here's a study on magnesium. I'm going to pull that up real quick. This is from the NHANES data, which is like a big nutritional pool of data that really looked deep at some of these things. Just want to make sure it's clear for everyone. Okay. All right. So check this out. So in conclusion, this is looking at the NHANES data, right? This is looking at dietary recall. NHANES 2 and 3 data was NHANES 3 was conducted. Dietary magnesium intake in the US population remains essentially unchanged. Furthermore, race or ethnic differences in magnesium intake also persist. And so in conclusion, dietary magnesium intake continues to be inadequate among large numbers of the population. The health implications of suboptimal magnesium intake by U.S. adults remains poorly understood. Thus, research that addressed the health consequences of inadequate magnesium intake is warranted. And then they saw it more in African Americans as well. I just think it just comes down to the more processed food, because we know there's data on more processed food in certain culture groups for whatever reasons. That's going to have lower nutrients, and it tends to have more processed like sodium and salt. Not the good kind of like high quality sea salt with full spectrum nutrients, but more processed food equals less nutrients. It equals more sugar. And then when you consume more sugar, guess what happens to the magnesium you're taking in? It gets processed in the Krebs cycle, because you need magnesium and B vitamins to process extra sugar. So the more sugar you're coming in, you create a transaction fee of burning up more of that nutrient. So really important here, because magnesium intake is so low among many populations of the U.S., and inadequate magnesium intake is associated with an increased risk of acute and chronic conditions. An urgent need exists to perform a current survey to assess physiological status of magnesium in the U.S. population. So this is a big deal. These are peer-reviewed studies on this. Right? This is what, 2003. This is 20 years old, 20 plus years old. So we've known this for a while. And we know the more processed food being consumed, think kids, right? Then the more these deficiencies will be magnified for sure.
And we can measure this. So at the end of the day, how we can help you with this is we want to get some labs done. There's several ways to do it. There's urine, there's blood labs, but there are functional labs that specialize in nutrient deficiencies, and we can measure this. Most people, even the people that come to us that are doing everything right on the diet front, they still are suffering from deficiencies, and they have toxins.
Absolutely.
They have toxins.
Absolutely.
So, we see vitamin C extremely low. Now, I just read an amazing book. I believe it was titled Curing the Incurable, but it's all about vitamin C. And I posted some screenshots to my followers about some of the spark notes in it. Now,
Yeah.
one of the big ones here is that apparently goats are just incredible, healthy savages. I mean, they just don't have the real sickness. So check this out. Okay, this is from the book here. This is Curing the Incurable. It's all about vitamin C. This is regarding illnesses in children, pertussis. We're talking some of this study is from the 30s. We're talking pre-vaccine for polio and all of that, right? Now, here it says here, goats are believed to produce as much as 100,000 milligrams of vitamin C daily when faced with life-threatening infections or toxic stress. Here was another, this was in the 1920s, tuberculosis was huge. And tuberculosis was a big threat. It says here, a daily vitamin C intake greater than 90 milligrams and eating more than the average amount of fruits, vegetables, and berries lowered the risk of contracting tuberculosis. Here was another one. A study followed 85,000 women for 14 years. They found no association with vitamin C and increased risk of kidney stones. Same thing in 45,000 men. So some people in the online health space, they'll freak out about vitamin C and they'll say, hey, you're going to create oxalate issues. You're going to create kidney stones. I haven't found it to be true. Candida and fungal issues drive up oxalates way more. And when we fix that, the oxalates go down. So I think vitamin C it's a huge deficiency. It's almost everyone we see, because humans, we can't synthesize it like pretty much all other creatures.
And also certain electrolytes like magnesium and potassium do help push to excrete oxalates. And so by increasing your magnesium and potassium, you're going to also help improve that excretion. So that's a good thing there too. And if I just highlight one more thing, I want to pull this back up here just to make it clear to everyone. So we talked about iron on this. We made that super clear. Iron's a big deal. We talked about at least 8 milligrams, but up to 30 or 40 if you're a menopausal or if you're a cycling woman who has a lot of heavy bleeding, hemorrhagia, we may go much higher than that. Now, when it comes to B12, we could throw in other B vitamins, berry, B1, B2 with riboflavin, B3, niacin, or nicotinamide riboside chloride, some of the NADH products. So we could definitely expand B vitamins. And we know that plays a big role with energy. Magnesium, we talked about the heart. Magnesium is a natural beta blocker. So, do we see cardiovascular issues on the rise? Yeah. Magnesium is a natural vasodilator. It helps relax the heart and it helps lower blood pressure, helps with stress, and it gets depleted with high glucose. Vitamin D is a big one. Obviously, we're going to try to get it from the sun, but we may need 4 or 5 or maybe even 10,000 IUs. And of course, that's going to impact the immune system. Um, Vitamin D impacts T regulatory cells, and yeah, it helps with calcium absorption and phosphorus absorption. I want to add in here potassium. Potassium, we need about 4,700 milligrams for the DRI, so we can put potassium here, and we don't get enough. I challenge the average person to go through and just look at potassium. We don't get enough. Run it through a chronometer. Go to chronometer.com, run your diet through the day. You'll probably find that you may only get 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day of potassium. And that's really important. Our cells need the sodium potassium pump, sodium in, potassium out, for our cells to work well and to have good communication via cell membrane. And so we need healthy sodium potassium. So 4,700 milligrams a day. And again, like your best sources are going to be your avocados, and to be your best. The average person is probably thinking banana. Potassium is twice as high in avocados than banana. And then, of course, CoQ10, really important for energy. Also, very much helps the thyroid antibodies. If there's a lot of thyroid inflammation or TPO antibodies, magnesium, CoQ10, and we'd even add in selenium, can be very helpful with heart and energy and thyroid inflammation. So 200, maybe even up to 500 if we're older. The older we get, the less CoQ10 we make. And again, if we're taking a statin, statins block the mevalonic acid pathway that causes you to make CoQ10. And last but not least, and I'll let Evan kind of riff a little bit more, zinc. Really important for fingernails, really important for your immune cells, really important for making stomach acid. Guess what? If you don't have enough stomach acid and enzymes, all these nutrients are going to be for naught, because a lot of times you need good stomach acid and enzyme levels to break these things down, ionize them, and absorb them. And so zinc's really important. Also important for your hair as well. And we'll throw selenium on there. Selenium is really important for your hair, for your thyroid antibodies, for your liver, for recycling glutathione. And we need 200 to 400 micrograms of selenium a day, ideally in a selenomethionine or selenium bisglycinate form.
Grab your phone. I think it's on your desk and it's buzzing in my earbuds. Buzz. Yeah, CoQ10's it's huge. I'm glad you brought up CoQ10. So CoQ10 is also something I see depleted all the time in people that have had the virus or the injection. And there's papers on that. Just type in the virus CoQ10. You can read about that. It's also been very protective. Same thing that we saw with vitamin D. People that had adequate vitamin D, they were not dying if they got infected, versus the people that had vitamin D deficiencies. All the people in the ICU, they had vitamin D levels of a 30 or less. And the same thing we're seeing in the literature with the CoQ10, which is that if you have adequate CoQ10, you are more protected. And so there's a paper here I was reading. It was titled Coenzyme Q10 Therapeutic Potencies Against the Virus and Other Similar Infections. And the long story short was, of course, you need more CoQ10. And you can measure that in the organic acids. We can look at CoQ10 there. So
yeah, I got a study here looking at combined supplementation of coenzyme CoQ10 and how important it is for mitochondrial bioenergetics, for membrane antioxidant protection, and then just basically almost specific medical conditions are associated with low circulating CoQ10. So really important that we're dialed in with that. Plus things like statins can drop CoQ10 production. So it's really important that we're on top of that. And again, with CoQ10, a lot of times we'll do it in a reduced form. We'll do a ubiquinol form. Reduced means there's already an electron added to it, so it's already converted and activated. So that's important. The ubiquinone is the actual CoQ10 form. And so we want to really, really be on top of that. And so I'm going to just kind of scroll here to the end of the study. But CoQ10 plays a really important role in the electron transport chain. So you can see low CoQ10 associated with breast cancer. It's important for DNA repair. They're talking about 300 milligrams a day, right? They saw it They saw basically reduced oxidative damage and inflammation levels in post-surgical patients with hepatocellular carcinoma. The benefits of single CoQ10 in cancers are either preventative or protective rather than curative, meaning, do it before, not you still would want to do it if you have it, but you'd want to be on top of it beforehand. So really important here. Anything else you wanted to say or comment on this study?
Not that one. I got to run. But here's the general takeaway: get your labs done. Let us help you. We can order these worldwide. Let's take a look at all your nutrient levels. Let's get a baseline look at where your nutrient levels are. Obviously, we could do a part two on this, so we could discuss the gut infections and all the other factors, not only just the dietary deficiencies, but also what's happening internally from a parasite or a bacterial infection perspective. So let's earmark that. Let's do a part two on nutrient deficiency, like more root cause stuff outside of nutrition and soil degradation. But then if you need help clinically, reach out to us. Let us get these labs done so we can see where you're at. Because sure, we could just throw a professional multi at you, but there are certain cases where we're going to actually spot treat. We're going to do things a little differently. So Dr. J can help you with this at justinhealth.com, and we can get a workup done and look at your levels and then make a customized protocol that's going to fix your specific issues. We have some people, they're taking too much of something and they don't need to, or they're taking not enough of something else. That's where we come in and dial it in. So that's Dr. J at Justin Health, or me. I'm at evanbrand.com. You can reach out to us. We'd love the opportunity to help you and your family and your kids. We work with all ages, so we'd love the opportunity.
Just to highlight one more thing, Evan, you made some good points. It all starts with the diet first. We have to really get the good food quality coming in. Cooking is a big deal too. If we're not breaking down our food, cooking is pre-digestion. And if we have poor enzymes or poor acids, or we're stressed hormonally, we can burn through our nutrients higher. When we're cortisol's up, we can pee a lot of our B vitamins or even minerals and electrolytes like potassium out. And so the more stressed you are, you will deplete your nutrients faster. So it's not just, hey, put more in. Yeah, that's important, but also make sure you're digesting it. Also make sure we have the hormones and the good lifestyle strategies in place. And yes, supplements are going to be important. Look at that Senate document 264 from 89 years ago. That's a big deal. That was almost 90 years ago to the day. And it's only gotten worse, right? It's only gotten worse, and we're eating more processed food. And there's different testing we can do, whether it's red blood cell magnesium, whether it's organic acids, whether it's intercellular nutrient tests. We can look deeper under the hood and really get specific. And then we can customize protocols with our professional grade supplements. Quality matters. Not all supplements are created equal. Just like the nutrients in an organic potato, or let's say in Joel Salatin's example with the egg, a pasture raised egg versus a conventional egg, it was 20x. Well, guess what? You're going to have similar issues with professional grade products versus non-professional. The quality, the absorption, plus the external excipients in there, lead, those kind of things. You want to make sure you're dealing with the best on that front. Anything
Yeah.
else, Evan?
Well said. Well said. Subscribe to the show if you're not already. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you listen. Share this with somebody that you know. Every human on this planet, including us, I've measured myself. I still have nutrient deficiencies. So, like, there's no perfect people. Even your hottest supermodel in the Victoria's Secret show, she's got nutrient deficiencies too. Okay. So, this is not like
Yep.
some rare thing that only affects certain groups. Okay. This is
Correct.
everyone. So,
Yep. Good point.
all right.
Excellent, Evan. Appreciate it. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Comments below. Love to see what you think. And we'll put recommended labs and stuff down below in the resource section. Take care,
All
y'all.
right.